Alright, moving on to the next Patreon request, and this one comes from Hunter Johnson, who asked me to do a three-way crossover between Evil Dead, Owl House, and Ghost Rider. As always, if you guys would like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link below, head on over to my Patreon, where you guys get the third tier that allow you access to, allow you to send me Patreon requests to do here on YouTube, as well as check out all the other stuff on YouTube, on Patreon. If you want to just check out the stuff on Patreon, you guys can hit the other first two tiers and just check out the exclusive stuff over there. Anyway, so let's get started with the video. So this story is set after the events of Owl House. Like, the show's ended, and we're in like that big years gap between the bye scene and the end of the show. So like there's a couple years gap between Lou's graduating and whatnot. Anyway, so what's basically happened is that Kikimura's back, and she's she's gathered together all the other Coven heads who didn't like switch sides, like the other Coven heads who were still evil. And she's basically like, look, you guys have just been vying for power. You guys have been trying to take over, and they're all like, yeah, and we should follow you. And she goes, no, I've been thinking I wasn't a good leader, but I was a hell of a follower, and maybe it's time we bring back Belos. And they're like, yeah, Belos, you mean the guy who tried to kill us all? No. And they're like, well, maybe not bring him back so he can lead us, but more like we can have Belos help us in our endeavors. And they're like, well, what exactly are the endeavors you're talking about? And she's like, well, I have a way to probably bring Belos back and serve us. And they're like, go on. And they're like, well, see, Belos ages ago, when he was apparently Belos found a book when he was part of the human realm. And basically what he did was find the book, but even he knew that it was kind of it was too evil for him. And they're like, whoa, what book are you talking about? It's like, there are only 3 of these copies. And this is one of those 3. It's one of the 3 books of the Necronomicon Ex Mortis. And they're like, he had one of the volumes of the Necronomicon? Are you kidding me? He had it the whole time, and we never used it? Why? And they're like, and Kikimura's like, well, Belos never wanted to use it because it was too uncontrollable, and also he hated magic, let alone infernal magic. And this is kind of heavy shit. And they're like, so we're going to use it to bring Belos back? And they're like, yeah, but this time we'll have him under our control. So she leads the other Coven heads down into a locked vault that Belos had that had the Necronomicon. They break it open, they take the book, and go to where Belos was just a melting pile of goo, and you bring Belos back as a Deadite. So Belos immediately, and now Deadite Belos, he's like, thank you, Kikimura. I'm so happy that, you're still loyal to me, and I still have loyal Coven heads. Having said that, though, I'm starving, and proceeds to kill them all and then resurrect them all as Deadites. So now we have Deadite Coven heads, and Belos, this new Deadite Belos, wants to basically find the other 2 books, and rather than have a great drain on everything, he's like, I'm going to plunge the entire universe in darkness and blood. But in order to do that, I need to conjure a spell from the other 2 books. So Belos, now empowered by the Necronomicon, heads out, basically uses the door that Luz uses to bounce in between the 2 worlds. It crawls out, and they're like, oh, we'll get them later, but for now we need the book. So the first book is in Gravesfield. I think that was the town Luz was a part of. Luz lived in, excuse me. And yeah, she's there. She's having a date night with her friends, especially Amity. And that night they fall under attack by Deadite Belos, and they're like, Belos is still fucking alive? What? And they're like, well, he looks really different, and so does Kikimura and the others, and they're all fighting Deadite versions of them. But however, Belos can now just turn people into Deadites, and what happens is that Willow, Hunter, and Gus all get turned into Deadites. So Amity and Luz have to escape, and basically like Belos was ranting on about the second Necronomicon, and Amity explains like that book, like there were 3 books and they were bound in human flesh, written in human blood, but they were like meant to be legend. Like no one knows where they are. So what do we do? However, like they go find Masha and V, who are on a date themselves. They ask Masha like, "Hey, bad things happening. What's the Necronomicon?" They're like, "Oh yeah, there's said to be one buried in Gravesfield, but it was never really confirmed." So what happens is that they have to go to the crypt, dig out the second book, and keep it safe. And they're like, "Don't read the book. Do not like read anything from this book, or you're in for a bad time." And they're like, "All right, we got to keep this and find the third book away from Belos. Do we know where that is?" And they're like, "Well, there might be someone who might know." So Masha basically is like, "All right, I know, like, there may be a way. I looked on the web, certain places of the web, is that we can find someone who can help us." And they basically send out a message, like, on the dark web, to through this dark web of like practicing Wiccans and witches on Earth, to find Johnny Blaze. And they managed to locate Talia Warroad, who is Johnny's goth witch girlfriend. And they're like, and she's like, "Hey, Johnny, we just got a call to help, to Gravesfield." And he's like, "Oh boy." If you don't know who Talia is, she's from the Ben Percy Ghost Rider run. Forgot to mention that. So yeah, Talia and Johnny drive to Gravesfield. Luz is there. She explains the whole situation and tells them, "Hey, we need to keep this second book and third. Belos has the first book. We need to keep this book and the third book away from it." And it's like, "Well, where's the third book?" Talia explains that in my travels, I've discovered that there's somewhere else that's keeping the third book, but that's all the way in California. And they're like, "Well, guess we're driving to California." And they're like, "Well, how are we going to get there before Belos does?" And they're like, "Well, it's always my way." So they get in a souped up version of a Ghost Rider version of the car of a lowrider and drive there at fast speed. But at the same time, Luz is like, hopefully we can find these books and free Gus and the others from Belos's control. So they get there, but Belos and the other Deadite Coven heads have already massacred their way through an order of priests that have been trying to keep the book safe. So yeah, not great. It's not going great so far. But Ghost Rider proceeds to fight his way. Johnny Blaze turns into Ghost Rider, fights his way through them until he finally gets to Gus and the others and uses his penance stare, which burns the Deadites out of them. And he's like, "I do this," the Ghost Rider's like, "I would free the rest of you, but you all are tainted with sins." Luz is like, "Yeah, I don't feel bad for this part." She goes into her she uses what magic she can harness and goes into her Titan form to help battle Deadite Belos. And Amity's like, "That's really hot." So they managed to use the 3 books to they managed to get the third book away from Belos and use it to basically banish him and the other Coven heads to hell. And they're like, "There's scary, you thought you guys were scary? Nah, there's scarier things waiting for you down there." So the day is saved. The Ghost Rider is just "I'll take these books and keep them separate and hide them across the planet. And he drops them off. They have their date night, and everything's all hunky-dory. So there you go, guys. That is the Ghost Rider Evil Dead Owl House crossover. Once again, I'd like to thank Hunter Johnson for this Patreon request, as well as continued patronage. And you guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think of this story? Did you guys like it, hate it? Comment below, let me know. And once again, hope you all enjoy this. And like I said, if you want to just hit the link below if you want your own Patreon request done. Other than that, I am Mr. Multiverse, and I'll see you next time in the multiverse.